Are live.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and this is the Building and Finance Subcommittee meeting. I will remind everyone the mission for Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong students. And we are holding this meeting in accordance with open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation and is being recorded by video and audio. There is no public comment, so there will be no need to state that part of the preamble. Okay. Gary, Ben, I assume you want to take this in order of the way it's actually on the agenda, right? Okay.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, the first item, so Martha Jo can give us her information and move on with her evening after, I'm sure, a long day, is the dishwasher for the new combined school and the cost associated with using tableware.
I think Gary is going to put up a shot of that.
Maria.
I think that's going to be me. I'm going to give it a shot.
Uh, 1A,
1A.
right there.
Can you see that?
Oh, yeah, see it fine.
All right.
Okay, so assuming, we're obviously going to need, if you were to go with this, an additional body to take care of running the dish room, a minimum of 5 hours a day. So what you see there is the cost. The current pay rate is $13.50, the 185 days. Gary had entered in there the district's cost of the benefits, so almost 19,000 in the cost of labor. I estimated 36 dozen of the trays. You can see that 46 on the forks, the knives, the teaspoons, the soup spoons. The barrel magnets, those, the kids, we would hope that the kids would all put everything right into a dish room area, but there's always the chance of things going into the trash. So the barrel magnets sit on, it's a big round magnet that sits on top of the trash barrel. We used to use them in the nursing homes. It would just, if they threw something metal in, it would cling to the metal, to the magnet. It would involve purchasing tray drying racks as well. You can't, anything that comes out of the dish machine, it's not going to be completely dry. You cannot, per Board of Health regulations, towel dry anything. Everything has to air dry. So you would need racks, but these would actually air dry on after they came out of the dish machine. Our chemical company gave me an estimate of $700 for the actual chemicals, the dish soap. It would probably be, I think we had asked for a high temp machine, so it would use the high temp water to do the sterilization or sanitizing anyway, not sterilizing, sanitizing, as opposed to using a chemical sanitizer. So, and then, you've got the cost of the water too. I honestly have no idea how you would calculate the cost of
We don't
the water.
pay for water.
What?
The schools don't pay for water.
Schools don't pay for water? Okay. So we'll leave out the water. So 28,000. If Maria can scroll down. So I had also mentioned on there that you're going to have somebody, staff in that cafeteria, whether it's their, the elementary schools have, their aides that are in there, the custodians or whoever, monitoring the trash to be pulling out extra, trays and silverware. Again, it depends on the school and how the kids are trained, the age level. We did use the reusable trays in Rockport. It took a lot of training to get the kids to put things where they went, and the custodians were not happy at all about helping out to remove things from the trash. So there were days that a lot of trays went into the dumpster. But anyway, I'm showing on here the cost of, we're using the compostable items right now. Well, I wish we were, if the kids were here, compostable trays. We do have on our bid, these are the current year bid prices for compostable forks, knives, and spoons as well. Am I the only one that lost that shot? Because now I can't see what we were looking at, the spreadsheet. I'll just tell you what I remember it saying. So we were using the compostable trays at all the schools, and we were using plastic, just disposable,
Martha, Joe-
non-compostable.
Sorry, Martha, Joe. What do you, I think we lost Maria is what happened.
Oh, okay.
So I can show it, but did were we still on 1A or did we go to 1B?
We were on 1A.
Okay, good. Okay, great.
Second page. of 1A.
Okay, that's what I got confused on. Okay, let me,
Well, I'm glad it wasn't just me.
wasn't just you. We're assuming best that Maria's okay. Just one second here. Is
That's it.
that big enough to see?
Good
Yep.
for me. I don't know about anybody else.
Fine.
Fine.
Okay.
So again, these are the bid prices for the current year bid. I have no idea. Our bids are out. We probably won't get numbers until mid-April, but I'm sure they'll probably go up a little bit, but it's a good estimate here anyway. And again, I based it, figuring an enrollment of 450 with 60% participation at lunch. That's generally what our participation has been at for lunches, and then 30% on the breakfast. So a cost of 16,000 there for the compostables. If you can scroll down, I think it showed 16,038. So that is just the estimated cost of the disposable products as opposed to the cost of manual labor and using the reusable, washable items. And of course, they're going to have to be replaced every so often. So it is a big price difference, big cost difference. And you got to keep in mind that to make up that kind of money, that's a heck of a lot of lunches to serve. So you're looking at, was it 28,000 as opposed to 16,000?
But some of that's not every year, right?
No, not every year. I mean, the labor is going to be every year. So the labor in
Right.
itself, just the labor is going to be more expensive than using the compostable.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if the schools are even going to be composting. I have no idea what the thought is on that. They were using, what was it, Black Earth haulers or somebody? So you're going to have, this would be the initial cost. The second sheet that I had given Gary, I don't know if it's on there as B or whatever, it was just quotes from Central Restaurant Supply Company that we use, just showing the cost of the trays and just the backup there. That's all that was on that one. So, you're looking at, replacing a portion of those trays every year, a portion of the, the flatware every year. It's less sanitary than using the compostable trays. There's, you open up a sealed box and out they go, as opposed to, the washing and the, holding them in the rooms, in the kitchen or whatever. I mean, we'll do whatever it is you want us to do, but those are the prices. And like I said, that's an awful lot of meals to serve to try to bring in that much profit. It's not, you know, an additional $12,000 or whatever in sales. It's $12,000 in profit, which we unfortunately don't make a lot of profit.
Okay, Joel, you have a question?
Yeah, Ben, can you scroll up to where the numbers I've inserted are? So that 19.5 number is the cost of labor plus chemicals every year. So that's bare minimum repeat. And then that 4,300 number is the total cost of 540 pieces of each of those, trays, forks, and knives. And so that 1080 would be if we have to replace a quarter of the supply annually, you're looking at $1,100. So just trying to get an idea as to, I assume the barrel magnets won't need to be replaced more than every couple of years, and assuming that the tray drying rack doesn't need to be replaced more than every couple of years.
Right.
So you're looking at, I mean, it's still more money, but it's, by my math, replacing a quarter of the supplies a year, it's closer to 20,500, $21,000,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to throw that out there for the discussion.
Right, and the 21,000 compares to the price of the 16,000 for compostable, right?
Right.
So you're basically, the primary difference is the staff. I mean, that's the bulk of the financial difference is the staff member, which would replace the compostable throwaway supplies every year. Right.
Yes.
Right. And, would the magnets and the drying rack be possibly part of the furniture, fixture, and equipment budget of the project? I don't know. That's
Right. And the other thing I had mentioned on there too, Kathy, was, I mean, I did see the layout of the kitchen back in, I think it was in the summer. Those drying racks are fairly large. They were probably, the ones that we had in Rockport were probably at least 5 feet high and 2 feet deep. So you would slide those, the trays right into them. So you got to have, make sure you've got room for those trays in that kitchen area as well. I don't really know how that kitchen was. I don't remember the whole layout. I mean, we put a dish machine in there, which was for, thinking it would be used for washing pots and pans. It is a style of dish machine that can be used for trays. The one we have at the high school is a pot and pan machine that is not designed at all for washing trays. But this particular one that they were looking at putting in at the new school could do the pots and pans or the trays.
Did anybody else have, Sam, you have a question?
Thank you. I didn't know if you could see me with the layout that's happening. So Martha Jo, right now, are schools using compostable trays?
There's a lot of schools that are still using the styrofoam and just incinerating them. And then so the majority are using either the styrofoam or the compostable. There are not a lot of school districts that are using washable trays.
So if we're looking at the compostable products, it would be really helpful for us to know what it would cost to have a relationship with somebody like Black Earth to pick it up. Because I would hope that if we're using compostable products, that we wouldn't just be throwing it in the trash, that we'd actually be contracting with a composting company. So is there any way we could get a quote on what that would look like too?
I would have no clue about that. I think that's something that the principals were already looking into. West Parish was already doing it. That would be a Gary thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not actually, I'm just sort of saying to the larger group.
Oh, okay.
that type of contract, I would hope would be considered into the cost if we were to go the compostable route.
Yeah, can I speak? Kathy, I had my hand up. Black Earth is not free. They did try it in West Parish for a while, and I don't know that they continued with it. I think there were other problems with getting this stuff separated, the compostable stuff separated appropriately. And it's not free. It's relatively, I don't know if it's expensive, but it's I mean, they charge something like a couple $100 a year for a household. So I don't know what they'd charge for a school of 440 kids. So it's kind of, as you said, it's kind of self-defeating to be buying compostable stuff and then putting it in a plastic bag and throwing it in the landfill. I think we need to get an idea from Black Earth. They're the only ones around that I know of, but I think there's another one. I did see a truck the other day that looked like the same sort of truck. So there may be another service available in Gloucester, and that may help the price. And also, as Kathy said, I think some of that initial cost of actual materials could be part of the go into the building FF&E. It wouldn't keep replacing it down the road, but it would initially would probably buy it. So.
Laura?
Thank you. So anecdotally, what I remember when I was working in the Beeman cafeteria was that they were in fact throwing out compostable trays in the big bags. So that was the process. I'm wondering, aside from the sort of dollars and cents analysis here, there is sort of we teach our kids about saving the earth and taking care of our planet. And I'm just, there's not a way to quantify that in this context, but I do want to lay out or just remind us that, it's important to be thinking about this also in terms of, moving forward, how we're teaching our children to operate in the lunchroom. And as Martha Jo said, I'm sure it would require a lot of training, but I do think there's a value in addition to the dollars and cents to what we're modeling in the cafeteria.
So can I just say, just to be clear, we do have a dish machine that already is planned on being put in place. It's not a question of, do we need to put it in? It is already there.
Okay. So this is just so this question is just what it will take to use it realistically.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Great. Melissa, I see your hand. Oh, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Oops. No, I just wanted to follow up on that. So it was put into the dishwasher was put into the building, but without the cost of the utensils and everything to use it?
Yes. Because
Okay.
it was put in with the intent of just using it for pots and pans.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I didn't realize that.
But when we talk about F&E, there's an allowance that we put in per pupil for all sorts of things like desks and computers and all of that stuff. And it's conceivable that some of that could fall into that bucket.
Right. But the big cost, as I said before, is the staff person. Yeah. Melissa, I see
Like I said, our bid prices very well could go up. So that 16,000 that you're looking at could be closer to 18. But on the compostables.
Right. Yeah, because that materials are definitely climbing.
Maybe you can't see. Melissa and Joel both have their hands
No, I
up.
see Melissa. Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask a question so that we don't get caught up in deliberating because we're all full committee here except for Sabathia. So my question is, and it's probably more to Ben and Martha Jo, just because of their experience in other school districts. When I was in Veterans Memorial School as a elementary school, the 4th and 5th grade students actually participated in doing the dishes. And every week we were assigned to either be at the trash barrel where kids would dump their excess food in the trash. And then the next station was silverware, where everyone just put the silverware in a bucket, knowing it was going into a dishwasher later on, but it rinsed everything off. And then the third part, or the first part was garbage or trash. No, the first part was trash, paper trash. Second part was silverware. Third station was food getting scraped off, and then it went into an area where the plates and the trays got washed. So I guess my question is, without getting into child labor laws that are now in place, are there school districts out there still that involve their students in that process that you know of? I mean, it was teaching us responsibility, and it was, you had to give up your recess, but I was just wondering if that's still going on in the world.
Not in any that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I know that, Rockport's the only school district of the 4 that I've worked in that did use, we had started out there with disposable, and then went to the reusable. They did not have any student participation. I mean, as far as, you wouldn't be able to let them into the kitchen anyway because of Board of Health regulations. And I think you might end up, with a union issue too, if you're starting to take some of that work away from, inside the kitchen. I don't see any reason why they couldn't have kids monitoring or taking turns or whatever in the cafeteria side. I've just never seen it
that's where
happen.
it was. When we did it at Veterans, we were outside of the kitchen. There was an area where, like a big square that you could put the dishes on a tray that went into the kitchen. So the kids were never in the kitchen, and it lasted all of 20 minutes each day for the kids to do it, because it was after everybody ate, they lined up and got rid of their trays.
Right.
But I was just curious if that's still going on. I mean, like I said, it teaches responsibility, but at the same time, there's other issues that come with that.
Yeah, so I don't know this area that well. So I don't, just because I don't know of any that do it doesn't mean they're not out there. I mean, I really don't have I will say this, I mean, I will always advocate, look for places where we can have our kids take more ownership and responsibility in our schools, and this is certainly an area, the way you described it, where they could take a real role. There's some complications and some complexities to work out. Some parents may really push hard against it. Some may not, I don't really know that, but I do, I think it's interesting. It's worthwhile to consider whether it's around the cafeteria, whether it's around, our recess, whether it's, welcoming kids into school. Even our elementary students can take, especially upper elementary students, can take they're probably, again, I'll just say, I'm always looking for ways that they can take on more ownership, more responsibility, and this might be a place to consider that.
And just so you know, we thought of it as fun, not as a job. Just like we had to fold the flag at the end of the day and learn how to fold a flag, each class took turns rotating into that too. So it would just be great to see kids get back involved into responsibility, but at the same time, I understand it's a new world, I should just say. It's not old like I was.
It is certainly different.
Yeah, thank you.
Joel?
Sure, just to piggyback on that point, which I think is an excellent suggestion. 5th graders, every year they go to camp, they deal with, ORT and making sure that plates are clean, all the food excess is weighed properly. So there's, it's a small precedent still where our 5th graders are being tasked with meticulous post-dining cleanup, and that's at, oh my goodness, what's it called? Nature's Classroom every year. But to go back, kind of what Laura was touching upon, this monetary information is certainly important, because obviously if, using reusable dishes was, an exponentially larger annual cost, but at this point where these prices are relative to a $40 million budget within a few $1,000s of each other, I think what I would be curious to know is environmental impact. If someone can give me a, not necessarily tonight, but if someone can get a straight answer as to, whether using reusable materials, is in fact markedly more environmentally sound, more ecologically sound than using even the compostable trays, even if they are properly composted. In my head, that's how it works, but I'm not an environmental scientist, and I couldn't tell you that's the truth. But for me, at this point where the prices are so close, I'd be curious to know if one or the other had a substantial environmental benefit over the other. Because as Laura was saying, this is not just about, balancing the lunchroom budget with, revenue versus expenses. It's also about imparting upon our children how we're going to take care of this planet together as a community, even if it means sometimes going a little extra mile in cost or whatever.
Yes, and I think, tonight the objective was to hear the information. The dishwasher is planned. Martha Jo, I would suggest that you, with Ben or the principals, make sure that that kitchen is designed where it can do, you're comfortable that it's got the tray area and things like that, because it would be a shame if, because now is the time, I would assume, but should verify that it really is planned to be a fully functioning system for the reusable trays. If we decide, to do that, and it's set up. And so right now it's about gathering the information, not about directing the implementation, because we're still 2 years away. Numbers may change. I just think, as I say, tonight was to hear a report on what the financial implications are, even though we know that there are many other facets of this particular decision. I'd love, to know after, when we're closer, what the recommendation is from you and the superintendent as to what course of action. I think we then would get into policy, right? It's a policy issue, right? Do the environmental outweigh the financial, and do we stay committed to that? And so that when you come before us, we're not looking for break even. We understand that we've just put yet another financial hurdle to the concept that food service should break even. And I think we all, as a community, need to understand that it would be an incremental cost. Okay. I don't see anybody else's hands. Okay. All set with that topic? Okay. Thank you, Martha Jo, very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Joe.
Night.
Okay, so now we are going through the budget book.
Great. So folks, I'll begin and then hand things over mostly to Gary here. So we're going to give you an introduction to the budget book, so then you can peruse it more if you like outside of this meeting. Gary will highlight a few things as he goes through the various tabs, but trying to get too in depth. We'll pause every a little bit for questions or clarifications. But this is in response to asking for the budget book. So you have it electronically. As we go forward, it'll ultimately be printed. But we're going to get a little further down the process before we do that. Gary, anything to add, or then just direct me what I should share here?
Yes, if you could go to the tabs 1 to 13.
Yep, I'm there now. Where do you want me to begin?
Begin with tab
Well,
1.
how about actually, let me just share this folder so folks can see. Let me back up. So this is essentially the budget book. You have tabs 1 through 13. Gary, how would you just describe what tabs 1 through 13 are?
Yes, thank you. Tabs 1 to 13 are information items and introductory information that adds context to the budget summaries that are located in the alphabet tabs A through O. So this really gives a perspective.
And then if you see this, then
Yeah, if you can begin on tab 4, actually.
okay, great.
Capital request.
And folks, the reason we're beginning there is you have we've covered a lot of the, nothing, my cover memo, which is new, but the calendar, the process in that are, in one is about priorities, tab 2 is a calendar, and tab 3 is budget development process. We've gone through that with you in the presentations up until this date. So we'll begin with tab 4, capital requests.
Okay. The superintendent and we have met with each of the building principals and as well as department supervisors. And we got their list of items that they wanted to be replaced or new items. This chart is a work in process. It's sorted by school. The information has on there is for furniture and capital projects. The furniture, we have $200,000 built into the FY22 budget. Also, we have, if there's available funds at the end of this fiscal year, we could possibly purchase the furniture this fiscal year and for next year. Let's see what else. We have to meet with the director of DPW and to see when we can get some of these capital projects fit into the schedule. So that is yet to be determined. Ben and I will meet with Mike Hale down the road. So let me stop here.
I'm sorry, are folks seeing the list of capital requests? Okay, good.
Yeah, I just want to add 2 large requests that we've learned. One is for the transportation department. Then if you can cursor down to the very end, yeah, at district, there's a request to have a 2-bay bus barn, office space, and meeting space for the transportation department. If we had, as well as a parking lot, right now the parking lot at O'Malley is shared with incoming traffic from the school. Also, the 2-bay bus barn would facilitate bus repairs. Right now, we only have a 1-bay bus barn. So that is the cost. We're going to investigate the cost. So we don't have a number as of yet, but I just wanted to put it out there that that's on the table. And then obviously for your consideration, as well as administrative space to relocate the admin office away from the preschool, just to have our separate space and that we're not infringing upon their program. So at any rate, those are some large ticket items. Included in the list is furniture and smaller projects. And at this time, let's answer any questions that you may have.
Sure, good. The one piece I'd add is that, and I hope people understand, this is a list we're putting together, and then we would prioritize timeline and prioritize it over the course of a number of years. They're not. This is just the list we have now. This does not mean we are committing to all these projects. Want to make that crystal clear. I'll have to go through some significant vetting, both working with GPW, but also yourselves on some, especially some of the larger items here.
Joel has his hand up.
Thanks. That 2-bay bus garage, what's the urgency? Like, is this like we need this yesterday, or is this like a kind of a nice thing to have if we could ever get it?
I think it's probably more towards would be a very nice thing to have, as opposed to a urgent priority needs to get done, next year.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
So again, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I would just, throw out a suggestion when we start thinking about stuff like this. We have a vocational department that has built entire houses before over on Reynard Street. And we theoretically have a parking lot over at the high school that used to hold enough cars for students, staff, and faculty for like 1,400 kids. And there's under 1,000 people over there these days. So as we explore options, we need to see if this was, if any part of this could be done in coordination with, the vocational wing, if it was in fact, building an addition over at the high school, taking up some parking spaces over there. I know this would be a large building and they require steel, so maybe out of the realm of what we can do as a vocational department. But again, just one of those, kind of like Melissa had about having kids monitor for trash. If there's any synergy here between students and student education and this wish list, I just want to throw it out there now.
Thank you.
Good point. Jonathan? You're on mute.
Okay, there I am. The city is also looking for a facility to work on the fire engines, which currently they work on in the street out in front of the central fire station. And so there may be a greater need, citywide, and a chance to cooperate on a facility that would be usable, because we have a busy season and a not so busy season as far as that sort of stuff goes. There may be some way to work with the city, the fire department on that.
Great.
Great, that's that we can pursue that. The other thing that I do want to mention, that we're listing everything that we hear, but there are two items that are more critical, and that is the modular units. And those DPW, the director has indicated it's past its useful life. We're having roof leaks. The floors are in some rooms are caving. So that is more of an urgent item to replace that. We did have conversations with John Dunn, and funding could possibly be developed to fund those replacements at Plum Cove and at Beaman.
Yeah,
Our
so
next,
just to add to that, so very preliminary conversations. The lifespan of modulars is typically expected to be about 10 years. Ours are well past that lifespan. With the plan to ultimately replace Beaman and Plum Cove, if that was going to happen within the next 6, 7, 8 years, no, that's going to happen within the next 5 years. I think we might want to limp along in a major way, with a significant limp towards, waiting on those. If we all expect it to be further into the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year timeframe, which I think it will be, or could be at least till those are replaced, then it, if speaking to Mike Hale and speaking to principals, I think we've got to take a long and very careful look at the need to replace those modulars. They are in pretty tough shape.
Joel?
Sure. When we discussed these modulars last, I think Dr. Sapphire was still superintendent, and we had talked about the potential that if these are, singular modular classrooms at these schools, that the new EG vets, would have capacity to be a bit of a relief valve, and potentially as part of the redistricting that takes place for EG vets, you'd bail Beaman out to a degree, so it had fewer students and maybe able to eliminate the need for that classroom. Same thing, if you're able to pull enough from Beaman and Plum Cove or from that student population, be able to reduce the student load at those two buildings so that you could just decommission those two expiring modulars and not replace them and not be short. I don't know, I certainly don't think I've been a part of any conversation since then, but it was talked about, maybe 18 months ago, we were going over, or maybe a year ago, we were going over this last time, but just trying to see if there was a way with pressure relief those schools, eliminate the need for those classrooms when EG Vets comes online. So I just want to again throw that out there as an option to look at.
So we should look at that further. My immediate reaction is you could, with some looking at school assignment zones, you could have some relief to those schools, but you'd have to, I think we have to look at pretty quickly is, I think you'd actually be giving relief, grade by grade, as opposed to one entire classroom that then would move throughout the, throughout the progression. We don't have additional classrooms at EG Vets. We may have some space in each classroom. So, but again, that's just a quick reaction, really.
Yeah, I don't think it was gonna be pretty. I think it was gonna involve like rotating through, like, when one class does, a specialist, another class might be using the same room sort of thing. I don't think it was, again, pretty, but it was the way to avoid having to spend the money on replacing a modular for a school that hopefully is gonna get knocked down before modular's halfway done,
And as you say, you've had initial conversations, but how many actually, I guess I would like to know, what are the most urgent numbers of modulars? Because I know when we were building West Parish, we added, is it 1 or 2, Jonathan, to Beaman?
Yeah, there are a
Two.
significant number to
It was
age
two.
related.
So there's 2 that are relatively new, but the rest are 2008.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like
So-
half
so
of Plum
again,
Cove's floor space is the modular at this point, right? That's like half the
Yeah.
half
Yeah,
modular.
and they're 2008 also.
So, so just a initial, just heads up on this is something we have to look into very in depth on many levels. But just want you to know that that's something that is, continues to come up, both from principals and also from the Department of Public Works as a, significant concern.
So Ben, usually Mike Hale comes to our BNF meeting during budget time and presents what he believes the, big capital and most urgent need. So if he's, I guess when we have him come, which is usually March or April, or sometimes, I guess, late April, maybe you'll know more and we can have a better idea. Because a request like this would come kind of jointly from him and us.
Yeah, and that's why we're just really want to be, and maybe we should move on because this is very preliminary. This is not where we're going to get to. Where we get to will be after the process with, we've done the first step in this process, which is consult with the principals. Next is DPW, and then ultimately we'll do just what you described, Kathy, is have Mike, come with a real presentation and do that jointly.
Okay. And Joel, you.
Sure. A last thought is, again, just thinking about all available options. One question I would ask, appreciating the legal mess it would create, is we should probably ask the question, are these Plum Cove modulars, even in their current state, for instance, in worse condition than the East Gloucester School? For instance, and they go, okay, like, would the East Gloucester School be a better situation to have the Plum Cove students limp along until Plum Cove gets replaced? I know there's a whole green space argument, but just kind of answering that question, do we have a resource in district that is superior than these failing modulars, or are these failing modulars better than East Gloucester currently, which I think is probably the answer. The second question is, depending on what Mike Hale says, as far as number of modulars and how quickly they need to be replaced and what that adds up to, as I pointed out before, I don't think the Archdiocese is doing anything with that building. So if we're already a tenant over at St. Anne's, is there a way we go, you know what? We spend enough money over here, we need to make this a long-term lease and consider, St. Anne's becomes a K through 2 or something, and we redistrict out to avoid having to, if it's markedly cheaper to just pay rent for another 5 years than it will be to replace all of these modulars for 5 years. That might be something we consider. Again, I don't have the answers, but I just want to throw those out there.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think, well, let's move on then.
Okay, if you can go to tab 5.
Second. And then which sheet? By grade, or
Go to the first one.
by grade?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I'll increase that in size. Oop.
Okay, so this is historical enrollment by grade, going 10 years back in history. And you can see that if you look at K-12, the column K-12, and 2021, you'll see that our enrollment as of October 1st is 2693. That compares back 10 years previously, we were at 3015. What's interesting to note is the 3 columns to the right. If you look at K5, we were at 1377, and now we're at 1275. Middle school didn't decline as much, 644 to 606. There's a bigger decline at the high school, 994 to 812. So that we have that by grade, and then we also have it by school. Then if you can go to the next one.
Gary, that does not include people that are choosing to homeschool this year, right? I mean, it's hard to focus on this school year as it relates, you know what I mean? It's just, this year is an anomaly. We know there are kids that are our students, but are choosing to be homeschooled this year.
That's a good point. It doesn't include homeschool. Thank you for mentioning that. And then this is by school. Interesting to note, some of the schools had, well, actually, if you look at Beeman in 2012 at 300, and so their enrollment actually did increase. It went up and then it decreased, but it's still higher than 10 years previously.
We did that.
What's that?
That was intentional, right? That's when those modulars came on for the West Parish project, right?
Well, that was in 2008 that we went from it to be a 2-class school into a 3-class school. So, I mean, I don't know what the numbers mean, but it was a little bit before that.
If you look at West Parish, 374 to 353, not that much of a decrease. And veterans the same, 220 to 215. So it's interesting by grade or by school, again, going back 10 years compared to what we have today. Again, all these enrollments are as October 1st. If we go, any questions on enrollment? Again, all these tabs, they add to the budget summaries, provide additional information. So it's very helpful to look at the complete package. Tab 6, let's look at tab 6. It's about state aid.
In which document, Gary, is in there?
Which document?
Yeah, the 3 of them.
The first one on the top.
Yep. One second. There you go.
Thank you.
This summary, this is the summary you want?
No, that actually the other.
Yeah, so Gary, tell me that, because mine might be ordered differently. Just tell me the name of the document.
Do the foundation budget. Yeah, yours is different.
Can you see that?
No,
Uh,
not well.
I mean, you can see it, but I'll increase it.
Yeah,
Okay, but you can actually, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we can see it.
yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay,
All right, so the general state aid goes to the cities and towns for the schools, and it's a complicated formula. What they try to do, the state, is develop a foundation budget for each and every school. And it's calculated by looking at the foundation enrollment. Now, you may ask, what is the foundation enrollment? And it's different than the enrollment that we just looked at, because it looks at school enrollment in person, and obviously this year remote academy, and students that we're financially responsible for. And that could be students that choice to other public school districts, charter schools, special ed schools. So it's a total of both of all those components. Now, we slot those kids, the state does, into K-5, junior middle school, high school, vocational. We come up with a cost based upon their grade level. And on top of that, we add incremental cost for special ed, English language learners, and low income. So we get a total in the black rectangular box at towards the bottom. Those are all the costs, and they tabulate to 39.24 million. Now that is the foundation budget, and that is also what we need to spend. We're required to spend that much money. Now the budget that we have presented is 45 million. So we met that requirement. So let's go to another one of those documents in that, which is called Chapter 70, Summary with Notations. Yeah, if you can blow that up, that's the right one. Now that 39 million, the state is shared between the state and the local government. The state aid is determined by the wealth of the city. The city of Gloucester, for purposes of state aid, is regarded as a wealthy community. In fact, we have one of the lowest state aid percentages that you can have at 17.5%. So the state is going to take that 39 million and multiply it by the targeted aid at 17.5%. That yields for this year 6.8 million. And that is an increase of 136,000 and change. That amount is sent directly to the city, and the city uses that money with their local share and provides us with the 45 million, we hope, that we're presenting to service and educate the students of our city. Now, obviously, the 82.5% is the local share. So that's a split. And the wealthier the community, the lower the state aid. That's how that works. Any questions before we move on to the next tab? Okay, I guess we can move on then to the tab 7.
I don't have a question, but I just want to point out that for years, year after year after year after year after year, this idea that Gloucester falls among the wealthier of the communities in Massachusetts is just simply unfair.
It's based on property value, not on tax revenue.
Right. No.
So that's an excellent point. It's predominantly based on property tax, which there's a high number of property taxes derived in the city. So any other questions before we move on?
Gary, you want me
Okay,
to show the Gloucester per pupil or state average per pupil? State average per pupil.
let's go with the Gloucester.
Okay. That size here.
Okay, this is this per pupil information. The latest information is from 2019, and this is based upon the end of year report. So let's go all the way to the bottom, and it's the bottom shows the total expenditures both in district and out of district for Gloucester. The total is $17,212 per student. So when you take the total cost between the city, what the city pays and what the school district pays, divided by the number of pupils, that's what that amount is. Comes to 17.2 thousand.
So
So
just to be clear, Gary, so that includes, the DPW contributions and other city department contributions to the schools. That would include,
and it also, right, and also includes grants and revolving funds. So it's pretty, it's total cost. And as Ben just mentioned, the on behalf payments the city makes for operations and maintenance is in the neighborhood of $4 million. So that's part of this calculation as well. So let's go to the state, which is the next tab, or the next in the tab.
you can see that.
And this is the state average. If you go all the way down, and let's,
So these are total
see the-
state numbers, right?
what's that?
These are total state numbers.
Yes, this is all the school districts in the Commonwealth, and the total expenditures divided by the total pupils amounts to 17.1. So ours is just a little bit higher than the average, just by a little bit. So that's right where you want to be, is not, right in the average. Any questions on the per pupil? This is, again, adds flavor to the total budget that is in the alphabet tabs. So let's go to, we're going to skip tab 8 because we've already talked about it in our presentations, what the state and federal entitlements were. Let's go to the end of year report, which is pretty interesting. Okay, now, if you blow this up and cursor down to the next page. So let's look at that rectangular box. Now this has 11 columns. The first column is the appropriations the school committee makes. That's that $45 million we're talking about. The second column is what the city pays, either directly or on behalf. So the maintenance we talked about is a little bit over $4 million, and that's the custodial as well as the maintaining our buildings, that adds up to about $4 million. These numbers come directly from the city auditor, and they're included as part of the end of year report that I prepare and send off in November of this past November to DESE. This is FY20, which is the most recent, and also includes the federal and state grants, as well as our revolving funds, athletics, school lunch, and etc. So let's cursor down. Well, before you cursor down, let's look at some of the other city expenses. Insurance on retired school employees amounts to $2 million. The other circle, school choice tuition. So the city pays to the state $2 million for the students that choice out of that live in Gloucester but choose another public school or charter school. So let's go down to the bottom rectangle. And here are, if you look at the school in the first column on the left, for FY20, we spent 42.5 million. We budgeted, I believe, 43 million. The city paid 16 million. And then our grants of 2 million, federal grants, and then other local revenues. The total spent on behalf of Gloucester Public Schools comes to $63 million. So that's all in, all total cost. So that's an interesting number. When we talk about 45 million, we're only talking about the money that we directly control or directly have from the city. So
Gary,
let me
that-
stop there and see if there's any comments or questions.
That includes all the other grants we receive as well, right? Through.
Yes, it does. Private grants
Okay.
from GEF as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I was sure that was going to get a question or two, but let's move on. We covered the end of year report. Let's look at tab 10, which is very interesting. This is out of district tuition. It's a large cost to the district. How we budget for is interesting too. And so I wanted to highlight this and then talk about it. So on the listing here is all the different schools for special education. Number of students are in the middle column. And then the total cost per local education special ed, private school or public school. So interesting to note on the North Shore Educational Consortium, that's our biggest at $1.4 million. And that includes the upper school, lower school, and it's the high school is the upper and middle school. The lower is your elementary. Kevin O'Grady is for more students more involved. And then you have Recovery High and program at Topsfield. So all told, that adds up to 1.4 million. Our other collaborative is SEAM Collaborative, and that's at 140,000. When you add up all these different placements for special ed students, you're looking at a total cost of $3.2 million, which is in that small rectangular box. Now let's look at some of the offsets that how we pay for this budget item. Prepaid tuition, we talked about, and the last time we mentioned it was 544. That's an offset, as well as the circuit breaker, and that's at 1.1 million. That circuit breaker is for the students that we claimed in FY20. We received the funding in FY21, and we're going to disperse it and use it in FY22. So when we subtract the offsets against the total expenditures, we come up with 1.5. We're going to add some money for placeholder for students that may move into the district during FY22. So our total budget is 1.9, almost $2 million. So that's what we have budgeted for out of district students. Any questions on that? All right, let's move on to revolving funds. You've seen this chart before. We've talked about it at earlier B&F committee meetings. Food service is a challenge this year, as you know. Right now, we show a deficit of 48,481. We're addressing that deficit by moving food service salaries to the general fund of 220,000. That will provide, bring in the food service fund into the black, and it will provide some cushion as we move, as we look at FY22. So we're able to afford those salaries because we received additional pandemic funding from the state, and we expect from the federal government as well. So we're still holding to our prepaid tuition amount of 544, and then and that's how we address the food service. Let's move on to athletics. Healthy balance of 55,000. So we're looking good for the athletic fund. Moving down a little bit further. Transportation, 27,000. We have enough money in the transportation fund. School choice, we receive money from the state DESE for students at choice into Gloucester. If you cursor down a little bit, we're at the moment we have $8,000 and we expect more payments to bring that further into a higher balance. Preschool, we're breaking even, and that pretty much rounds out our revolving funds that I want to talk about. Any questions about any that I talked about, or any other ones that I didn't mention?
I don't see any hands, Gary, but I have a question on food service. So as we project next year's expenditures for food service, you know, in an ordinary year, should we be thinking about how much of the general fund we'll need to devote to food service?
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't want to forget the big picture of food service. Some of it's some of it comes out of the ins and outs of the revolving fund, but we still don't make enough profit per se or surplus to pay every bit of our food service costs.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Kathy. And we're going to have to look carefully at our food service ending balance for this year.
Right.
And then what we're budgeting for food service salaries next year.
Right.
We typically budget for Martha Joe's salary out of the general fund, but depending upon how the food service program is going to be, is it going to be similar to this year or is it back to the traditional? So that is something that we're going to need to keep in our mind. And again, this budget is based upon the information we know today. And it's going to be refined as more information comes forth. Just like health insurance. We're estimating now based on historical information. As we learn about the renewal from the GIC, we're going to refine our estimates. So just like the capital projects is a work in process, our budget is a work in process, and we're just beginning. It's not over until the end of June when we ask the board to approve the final budget.
Right. And we know this year has been particularly challenging for food service in terms of costs. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say kudos to Martha Joe because we've asked her to pivot, substantially from the normal food service program to the bag lunch program for both lunch and breakfast that she is administering. So without further ado, let's move on to tab 11. No, we just did tab 11, tab 12.
Second.
Okay, so these are the salaries for grants and revolving funds. The Special Ed 240 grant is one of our largest entitlement grants, and as well as Title I. So we'll have the most salaries coming from those two grants. If you can cursor down, Ben. You see Title I coming up, and that is another large grant. So total, we have 1.28 million salaries being paid by grants in the FY22 budget. And then the revolving funds are below, and if you can cursor down, Ben,
Yep.
You'll see school choice, athletics, preschool, transportation. And the total between these two grants and revolving funds amount to over $2 million. If you cursor down a little bit more,
Oh, I see. Yep.
at $2.3 million. So let's go to the last tab, and I'm gonna, last tab is 13. And this is a summary, budget summary, and it's by department or by school. And this is what you've seen before in previous budget presentations and through the years. This again is just the general fund or what the school committee appropriates. So in FY21 was 44 million, 0.3. Now we're proposing this budget of 45.6 million. This is the same exact number that we presented to you during the school committee and the previous BNF committee presentations. It's a 1.25 million increase from the city, which is the same increase as we did that we asked for and received last year. Let's just talk about some of the percentage increases. The athletics, you'll see, is 220,000, which is down from 334. We budgeted more closely based upon actual expenditures from the previous years. So we were in the neighborhood of 225,000 to 250. So we're budgeting 220,000. Remember, the athletics also has a revolving fund that they use to purchase items. So the other one I want to cover is special education. You'll see that's a minus 3.93. Again, we talked about the tuition going down in the next fiscal year because of graduates, students graduating from their programs. And that was in the neighborhood of 500 to 600,000 that we reduced the budget. So at any rate, I'm going to also show you in a minute the public hearing notice. One thing, the next thing on the calendar is to approve the budget for display and also for the public hearing. And we want to show that to you, have plenty of time for you to digest that information, look through all the letter tabs, and we'll look at a few of them.
I think Joel has a question.
Sure.
So I just want to, as I always do, chime in that if you back out that last line, we have a $38 million budget that's going up by $725,000, which is a 1.9% increase over last year. So again, when you're talking to counselors, I don't know if they bother you, but they always give me a hard time about, why we get, such a large increase. The practical increase to things we're actually using for the district that are not employee benefits is a 1.9% increase over the previous year's budget if you take the last line out entirely. So I just want to throw that back out there for everybody who might get a question about it.
Okay.
I think in our past too, Joel, we've had kind of a subtotal and then the benefits after that and then the total. So that it was somewhat obvious of what's controllable, I guess.
Yep. I think that's a great suggestion. Let's do that, Gary, to have a subtotal before employee benefits. We've shared that with you in the presentations, but also want to make it crystal clear. So when folks are looking through the budget book, they can pull that out easily as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion. We'll definitely do that. And so you can see before the cost before benefits and then the costs with benefits.
I think that'll also be helpful, Gary, as the employee benefits gets more defined, as those
Yes.
estimates change, then we're not talking about how that interacts with our current spending plan.
Right. Okay, that's excellent. Any other questions before we look at, yes, Melissa?
Thank you. So I just have a question, and I may have missed this in the last 15 minutes when we were going over the budget. Secretary Pizer was speaking yesterday about acceleration academies and summer school expansions for this upcoming summer. And I'm wondering, is there a placeholder in this budget anywhere to pay for additional salaries?
So we have proposed that. That's in I'm not sure how it shows up, where it shows up exactly in the budget documents here.
Okay.
But I think it's, Gary, am I right in saying $60,000 we've allocated towards summer programs at this point?
Yes, I'm going to have a two-part answer to Melissa's question. The first part Ben talked about, we put money in the budget for summer school stipends to the tune of 60,000. But in addition to that, there is the ESSER 2 funding, which we can utilize that for summer school. So that's a possibility. So there are many different potential ways we can address more funding for summer school if there needs to be more than we anticipated with this budget. There's flexibility.
And just one additional piece is that Gloucester Education Foundation has named it as one of their, short-term priorities is to also support some enrichment programming in the summertime as well. So as we'll have a number of ways that we will, fund and stand up I think a very robust program this summer for kids.
Thank you. I'm assuming that federal funds is going to come for that as well, since it's a larger conversation, but I just wanted to make sure we had some sort of placeholder in case there's costs that come up that may not be covered by any grants that come out, if there's limitations on the grant. So I just want to keep sight of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. A good point. So let's now look at the public hearing notice.
Okay, second.
That was, can you find that?
It's in a, give
It
me a
is
little
you-
more. Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah.
Can you click on that? I just want to highlight that.
Let me share this.
So this is what you'll see in the newspaper, March 23rd. We'll advertise. And it's essentially the summary of what you just looked at, but in the format that we present for the public hearing.
So
in
Gary,
addition-
could we then do what I think it was Joel and Kathy recommended? It was actually have a subtotal and then have benefits added and then have the total net?
Yes, we can do that for this as well.
Great, let's do that for that one, because this is the one obviously most people will take a look at.
So we'll make,
As long as that last number where the 2.82 also gets one, the 1.9 gets shown also before the total, I think is huge.
yeah, we can do that. So that, I'm glad you mentioned that. So we'll make those modifications to this. We're going to ask the school committee to approve this for March 23rd. Yeah, on March 17th, we're going to ask the school committee to approve this to be advertised on March 23rd, and then also to hold the public hearing on April 7th at 7 p.m. And I just want to make sure that that date and time is fine with everybody.
Is that a planned meeting at this point? Or that's for B and F?
B&F meeting. So Gary, we would need to approve it at the March 10th meeting, right?
March 10th.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll make that change to March. We'll ask the school committee to approve that at the March 10th. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And I just want to go one more, I hate to bother you, Ben. If you can go to tab O, which is the letter, you would have to go in the letter tabs, A to O.
Getting there, getting there.
All right, thank you. If you can go to the end of the page.
End of the whole document?
Yeah, yes, end of the whole document. Okay, so we have the total 45.6 million. This is the same number that we just showed you on the summary page. And so this has all the detailed accounts, every single account, and that totals to our summary of 45.6 million. So if you want to look up anything, this is the one document that has all the accounts. And of course, you can go to the different tabs by school or by department, or go directly to this document, which has it all. So that is concludes my presentation on the budget book. Anything that you can ask me? No?
I think we're all good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next item on the agenda then.
Great.
Okay.
So I will take this. So I'm going to show in a second. It's in the folder, so you can look at it on your own. But this is the salvage list. The items for salvage from the East Gloucester and Veterans schools that have been identified by the principals working with their staff, getting input from their staff. And then also they're now reaching out, as we're sharing this with you, they're also reaching out to their school communities to see if there are other items which maybe they've missed, that maybe someone who was at East Gloucester Veterans prior to is aware of. So we just want to make sure you're aware of this and see if anybody on the school committee has any additional thoughts. And these are the items that will, at this point, are being sort of held aside to be brought over or perhaps, redone at the new school. So I'll just give you some examples here. We'll start with veterans. Start with veterans first. So there's a framed trowel. This is from the original, the trowel used to place the original cornerstone in the current building. There's the cornerstone itself and a time capsule underneath it that would hope to try to bring over to the new building. There's the veterans sign, which is large wooden lettering that's on the existing school. There's also a carved veterans school sign outside of the really at the entrance, the stairs outside. There's a memorial tree and plaque to September 11th that the school would like to bring over. And then also a buddy bench that's was donated by a retired teacher. So the point here is not necessarily to decide now or which of these will definitely go on or be a part of the school. Some of them may be sort of but which ones we want to at least save at this point, particularly from veterans, because demolition will happen late fall. In order, so then we have the option to preserve them and then reuse them potentially. The reason we need to decide these things now is not only, as I said, veterans will be demolished in late fall, but they need to be included in the package, the design development pricing package that's going to be finalized in March. So folks need to be aware of like the scope and scale of what's to be preserved, held on to, and then perhaps identified identified where to be put in the new school. And that obviously has to go into the design process as well. So let me pause. I see that Joel has a hand up.
Yeah, do we know, like, what did we save from West Parish? What did we save from Fuller? What did we save from Central Grammar? Like, what's our history here of actually saving stuff like this?
We saved a lot of stuff from West Parish. We didn't do a very good job with Fuller. There was, I remember, because it kind of was, it went in increments. And I don't think there was ever this concerted effort to go in and pull out all of the stuff that, that, you know, that should have been pulled out collectively. We pulled out, I remember pulling out all of these leather-bound attendance books, handwritten, that were stored in the back of the old chambers in the old, that were from the 1880s. They got put in storage somewhere. I remember pulling out the, going in and pulling out the, out of the school, the portrait of Milton Fuller, you know, and that got put in storage somewhere.
What about West Parish? West Parish was more coordinated. How much
Yeah.
stuff was saved over there?
Well, they saved the cornerstone. They saved the, because they moved the memorial rock for they saved at considerable expense. They saved the playground, the science playground. There were a few other small artifacts, but there wasn't any like art, or they didn't save, like East Gloucester's talking about saving seats out of the auditorium. I mean, they were the same seats that were in West Parish. I don't think anybody has those. Going back to Fuller, I think some of the seats got taken out of Fuller.
I think
All
East
here in
Gloucester
East
got,
Gloucester.
I think East Gloucester got a few of the West Parish seats to backfill where they were broken in East.
Right, that sort of thing.
No, the Fuller Auditorium is over at the stage company now.
Yeah,
That seats.
right.
So then moving on to East Gloucester. So there's a school mural that's painted in the main hallway by the entrance. And that's a question whether it should be salvaged or reproduced, which we'll get to as we continue with design. There is the wooden auditorium style seating that the principal has mentioned. Do we want to save a few and have them installed in the new school, perhaps in the office? She's mentioned. There's a cornerstone again, also at September 11th, memorial tree and plaque as well, just like at Veterans and I think all of our schools. Engraved bricks that were donated in honor of folks, in honor of people. Those could be reused or an area that's rededicated. The gym is dedicated to Glenn White, and the library for Emma Kidder. And so I'd like to continue those. And then there's a dedication plaque on 2 benches dedicated to folks, and perhaps bringing those over, either the plaques or the benches themselves. The benches aren't in great condition, but perhaps the plaques we put on new benches. And then also there is already thought being put into how to honor the memory of Nurse Terry. Obviously, there isn't anything that we'd bring over from East Gloucester at this point, not having something set up yet. But if that's set up between now and the time East Gloucester, people move out of East Gloucester, or it's developed anew at the new building, will be determined. So.
Yeah, that's for Tammy Morgan or Tammy Norman. But I don't know. I never remember her married name.
Moore's. I'm very sorry to be messing with the name tonight. It's just.
Yeah, they were talking about wanting to get a bench that would be outside of the nurse's office, sort of thing, for the kids to wait on, as one of the conversations they had.
One of her abiding piece of advice to almost everyone who came to see her was drinking water and have you had enough water? So there's also been talk about doing something with a, in addition, perhaps a memorial water fountain or the like, because that's something that people will always remember her for.
Nice hop in, and while that all sounds, nice, and I probably think I'd support something like that, there's been a counter narrative running in the school committee for the last couple of years that we are going to stop naming things after people because it makes things difficult. So if God forbid that water fountain ever needs to be removed 15 years from now, there is an uproar that it's the so-and-so memorial water fountain and you can't remove that water fountain, right? So just maybe as we think about what to do to honor her, we make sure we do it in such a way that it's not going to become a thing that if it needs to be shifted in the future, we've not handcuffed ourselves.
I agree.
So the intent of going over this list publicly also is if anybody thinks of anything that should be on the list, we'd want to know, or the project team would want to know.
Yeah, and they need to know by the end of the month, really, beginning of March. So sometime, no later than the next week. I mean, the list will be finalized within the next, week to 10 days is I guess what I should be saying. So if there anything from the subcommittee that folks have thought of or would like to do or know about now or within the next few days would be the time to let myself or one of the principals know.
And it's understood that the lights will be obviously taken down carefully and put for safekeeping at DPW.
Yes. And I'll add that to the list as well. But no, that has already been discussed by the building committee, I believe, by the project team, certainly. But we'll make sure that it's also on that list as well, very clearly.
Okay. All right. Next item of business is the DPW open tickets.
Yes, we have the open tickets in the folder. Ben, if you can call that up. So you'll see that this is some items are crossed off from the time that we've from February 17th to today. They have accomplished and closed off those items that I've put a black line through. So that's an update. We had met, I believe it was February 13th, with Mike Hale and Joe Lucido, Ben, myself. We talked about the issues. There were several tickets at the high school in relation to room comfort, temperature, hot temperatures, cold temperatures. According to Mike Hale, Siemens needs to reprogram the controller. They're waiting for full report. Ben, do you want to add any additional information from our meeting?
No.
Okay. There are various roof leaks that were identified in this list. Of course, during the winter time, you can't fix the roof. There's just too much snow and ice built up on the roofs to get those repaired at this time. As soon as it thaws, they'll be able to have a contractor go up there and repair the roof. Questions?
I see Joel.
Yeah, the one ticket that stood out to me was the GHS library leaks again. My recollection, and I have not been on the school committee that long, is that within the time that I've been on the school committee, the roof over the library was leaking, the roof over the library was repaired or replaced, then the rest of the school roof was replaced, and now here we are with the roof over the library leaking again. It has got to be within 5 years at most of that roof being repaired or being new. And so my question, I guess, would be is this in fact a repeat where new material is in fact leaking? And if so, is there any warranty? And if you replace a roof on your house, you get usually at least a 10-year warranty. Is there something that this is someone else's buck to get this fixed? Because it seems like we've done a lot of roof work over there for leaks to be happening so soon.
No, I agree. There was a lot of roof leaks at the library, GHS library, and that's what stalled the carpet installation. They'll be able to answer your question. They won't be able to answer it until the weather thaws and they're able to go up and investigate. And then we'll definitely report back as to the findings. But I understand your concern. It is, obviously that is, we're upset to hear that it's leaking again after we've just installed the library carpeting. So good question.
That is a new roof, and it should be still clearly under the warranty. And I'm sure Mike Hale's aware of that, but
Yeah,
I'm sure to point it out.
We'll follow up with him. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's move on to the last agenda item, which is the budget transfers. Ben, I hate to bother you again, but could you?
Get in there.
Yeah, okay. So the budget transfers, the first one is 35,000. We needed to transfer from the budget, paraprofessional budget, to the transportation out of district for a new student. So we needed to do that. The next item, this 100,000. I talked about this before. This is a transfer, a temporary transfer we made out of the health insurance account to buy some PPE. We're going to need that $100,000 back. And so we then are transferring back. This transfer transfers the $100,000 back from the business office supplies to this health insurance account. So it restores it because our original budget was almost spot on to the estimated actual health insurance costs that we anticipate at year end. The third one is another $20,000 one I want to talk about. Okay, we can talk about this 10,000. We have budgeted 10,000 for a security guard for GHS. There has been no expenditures out of this account, zero. And so what I'm doing is eliminating that budget out of the security because it's not being used, moving it to business office supplies. This health education budget had a negative 23,000. So I'm putting a budget back in there to erase a deficit account. We're taking that from the paraprofessional budget. Here we have needing money in the GHS para account. It was showing a deficit. And so we're taking it from another paraprofessional account that had a positive balance. And moving a little bit further down.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this one, 20,000. We needed, again, $20,000 for another student out of district transportation, 20,000. So we took it from the paraprofessional at Beaman account. And this food service one is just a transfer between two different food service accounts. GHS, we took it from GHS and then giving it budget to West Parish. And so that's just between two food service items, line items. So we're going to ask for a motion to approve the budget transfers as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, discussion? All right, Maria, roll call vote, please.
Kathy,
Yes?
Joel,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
yes.
Okay, that's all we have on the agenda. So
Okay, thank you. Gary, I thought it was very helpful that you went through some of those overview slides of chapter 70 and all those things that are not department related, because it does put our budget in context of how, what state aid we get, how we fit in the big picture of the state, how our numbers are impacted by what we get for both, for chapter 70, and how the city is impacted by kind of our lower chapter 70, putting a strain probably more so than other communities on the rest of the city. But so I just think that refreshing everybody's mind about some of those tabs is a good idea. So thank you.
yeah, thank you. I agree.
Joel?
Did we get anywhere with looking into police detail for veterans drop off and pickup? I mentioned at the last school committee meeting that our principal's out there in a flak jacket, dodging traffic every day.
Not
we're
a
good.
black jacket, correct? It's a reflective jacket, I think. Is a big-
Reflective jacket says, that's right.
You know,
When we were working through the agenda for tonight, we just thought that there were so many things on it that and this came up very recently that we'll work on. I have not made any progress on it. I mean, I have spoken to the principals about it, and I'm not saying this is the correct thing, okay? But they really minimized it, saying, well, that's part of our principal's job. That's what we have. That's what we do, year in, year out. So I'm not saying that's the right answer, but it
Just get
wasn't.
him on the record, so God forbid there's a lawsuit, you could depose him and say, didn't you say this was part of your job?
I
He
had
said
some
that to me.
thoughts. I had
So
some
go on.
thoughts about that, Joel, that perhaps we could get him deputized. Like they have, retired old auxiliary police, and they're allowed to direct traffic, and they become indemnified because they're and that would do it, right?
Yeah, and listen, if he's not complaining about being out there and putting himself at risk, God bless him, and that's fine. We just want to get ourselves insulated from that. And then if we can make it so he's not going to, unfortunately, make the district liable for a car accident that, he quote unquote caused by directing. I think
Make
that
sure you-
kinda works.
Make sure you give him a lot of room when you drive up, Joel, okay?
Right. I'm half the problem.
All right. Yeah, well, keep on telling her to watch out and be careful and yeah, got it.
Yeah, that'll be on the March 17th agenda,
Great.
okay? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion-
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, Maria, roll call vote?
Kathy,
Yes?
Joel,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yes,
Thank you, Maria.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you,
You
Miriam.
all
Welcome.
soon.
Good night.
Good
Right.
night.
Night all.
Night.
Night, Melissa.
Hi, thank you. Great meeting.